Whitmer's new restrictions are already facing backlash. They take effect Wednesday and they'll last for 3 weeks. All in-person learning for high schoolers and colleges has been moved to online only.
No more eating out in person inside bars or restaurants. It's takeout or outdoor dining only. Entertainment venues like theaters, stadiums, and bowling alleys will close. And no more group fitness classes.
Some Republican lawmakers have already taken stances against these restrictions. Senate Majority Leader Mike Shirkey says the governor didn't work with Republican leaders, and one lawmaker even went as far to talk impeachment.
Rick Albin joins us right now to talk about this. Rick, how valid are these threats? What do you expect lawmakers to do in response to these restrictions?
Well, I don't expect them to do anything for at least 2/3 of the duration of this order, because the legislature won't be back in session until early December. As far as the governor and this legislature working together, they have a long history of not doing that. You can go all the way back to the budget of 1920 and for 2019-2020, and take a look at the difficulties they had putting that together. Now, for this fiscal year, because there was some federal CARES money and because there was an obvious need to have some type of unity, they were able to put together a budget much more quickly, much more efficiently. But the coming budget year could be pretty interesting too. So just using that as an example, I don't really expect there to be a great deal of cooperation here. The question is, what is it that they could work together, that they could both agree on, something that the legislature could pass, something that the governor could sign, and I'm really not sure what that is. I mean, I'm not exactly sure where the two could come together on this. Right now, the governor has the authority through the Department of Health and Human Services under the pandemic response to be able to execute some of these orders, these restrictions like we're talking about now. It does require legislative approval. So if the governor wants legislative approval and if the legislature wants to be involved in this process, then there has to be a dialogue that starts somewhere. They have to be able to sit down and talk about what the common goals might be and what they might be able to do. But quite frankly, that's not been the hallmark of the relationship between this legislature and this governor. And so I'm not sure that it comes together at this point. As far as what action the legislature may take, I mean, at this point, I think they've already gone down the legal road. I think that the legislature can and will come together to pass some type of legislation, but unless or until it has been negotiated with the executive branch, it may be an effort in futility. So at this point, the restrictions are what the restrictions are, and we'll see if the governor and the legislature can come together to come up with a more cohesive, a more unified message coming out of Lansing.
But Rick, real quickly here, while we got you, just to reiterate, you don't think that the Republican legislature will convene an emergency session over the next 2 weeks before their break is done for any of this?
I can't say that they won't, but I'm really not sure what the purpose would be in them coming together for an emergency session. I mean, if there was something that they wanted to proactively do, if there was legislation that they wanted to pass that would help supplement, that would work in some kind of concert with some of the restrictions that the governor has put in place. But beyond that, I'm not exactly sure what the purpose of that would be. But I'm not going to rule it out. I mean, this is 2020, and anything could happen, and certainly an emergency session is something within their purview.
We'll see if they move forward with their impeachment plans. All right, Rick Albin, thank you very much. Now,